Hey guys, it is time to review CRYMACHINA after getting the Platinum. For this one, I'll be looking at the usual topics. It's story, gameplay, graphics, and music. Be sure to check the timestamps in case there's something specific you wanna see. Let's begin with the story, and its first moments. The game opens with a cinematic where we can see how a girl is in a hospital, pretty much living her last moments in the world. After her death, we see how it seems like a computer is getting booted, and where it appears like this girl had a second chance after 2000 years. After some small chatter, Noah asks Levin to follow a path where they find data fragments, where Levin can hear the thoughts of the people who lived in a simulated world. One of them shares a particular moment of a person who had an illness named centrifugal syndrome. After reaching the end of the path, Noah tells Levin that she will be able to upload her data. However, enemies start appearing. After some small confrontations, Ecclesia, the second Deus Ex Machina, arrives to the scene, restraining Levin's movements. For her fortune, another person appears to protect her. Mikoro tells Enoa that she's going to fight Ecclesia, so she can finish uploading Levin's data. While fighting, Mikoro notices that Ecclesia isn't fighting at his full potential. However, for their surprise, more Deus Ex Machinas start arriving. In this moment, Ecclesia seems to be more interested in fighting the other Machinas, leaving Genoa's group for the time being. Taking advantage to this ease of fire, they get transported to the Imitation Garden. So the question may be, what else does this story offer? And oh boy, in the following minutes we will hear how humanity went extinct after a war for resources. I mean, they also had the centrifugal syndrome that they had no idea what it was, and well, humanity launched a ship that had 8 Deus Ex Machinas in charge of bringing back humanity. In summary, this is a quite packed story in the first 30 minutes, and there is more. Unfortunately for me, this story falls short after a while, and it is not that it is bad, but it brings plot twists quite fast one after another, not letting you catch up completely with what's going on. And don't get me wrong, I like a twist or two in the story, but the way this one was handled didn't help that much, because they had a quite strong question in mind. What is a human? From a philosophical point of view, I liked it, but most of his story at first falls in a good chunk of what I perceived as idle chat. Later it made sense because I believe it was an attempt to like the characters. However, in my case, I didn't really sympathize with them until the mid of the game, and that was just Amy and Enoa. So the attempt to like Levin didn't catch with me. Consequently, some further plot twist, I didn't really care what happened, because the story became kinda predictable. Where it hooked me once again was almost at the end, where once again this question of what is a human was brought once again, as well as another plot twist that I was not expecting as such. This game had a good number of times to make a nice plot, but they decided to follow the safe path till the very end. And believe me, in this kind of settings I consider that it does worse than something better. For me, it is a 6.5. It was a decent story. I would be lying if I said that I didn't enjoy several parts. And I try to avoid doing comparisons between games, but if you wonder what is for me an extraordinary take with the same premise of what is a human, I could recommend you to check Soma. That game does what CRYMACHINA wasn't able to achieve for me. Gameplay-wise, it is a fast hack and slash that it's kinda easy for the most part, until you reach the last chapters. The game lets you play with 3 characters after a while, where Levin is quite fast, Mikoro is somewhat more balanced, and Amy is the powerhouse of this team, hitting hard but moving slow. The stages are quite straight, having some platforming here and there with some portals that I recommend you to avoid until you are somewhere around level 60 at the very least. Every stage follows a similar mechanic of some chat, a couple of enemies, some more small chat, and then a boss fight. For the most part, I will say that the world is rather empty. Here, I won't dive further in the kind of inspiration the game had with these kind of stages, that goes for the graphic section, but the lack of enemies was something that made me wonder why? Why are there just a couple of enemies? Literally, or sometimes just a straightforward path that leads to a boss fight. This game feels kinda unorthodox with their level design, where I just wanted to fight the bosses, because having a couple of mobs here and there was just annoying after some time, because also these enemies have a poor AI. Literally, sometimes they just get really close but they don't attack or move. So it feels like they are just there to add pressure, but after a couple of times that pressure disappears and it's like, sure bro, just let me beat the heck out of your partner and then you're next. As I said, the bosses are the ones where I had the most fun, because you can break enemies or get them in a weak state where you can go all out, and ideally you want to keep them weak once again. so you have to manage your auxiliary systems to effectively extend this time as much as possible. And here it is worth questioning. Is that all the game offers? Not really. There are some unique bosses that have some interesting attacks, the last boss, and the post-content enemies above level 120. If you ask me when I had the most fun, it was while farming bosses for ego, to increase Noah subsystems, and also gather experience points to get a trophy. The best way to farm in this game is be somewhere around 20 levels below, find a nice stage by putting some random numbers, have a character with a decent number in dexterity, otherwise hits are going to miss quite often, and be prepared to lock the bosses as much as possible, because otherwise they beat you in one hit. Yeah, the difficulty is all over the place in this game, but if you are in the right level, the fights are really easy, even for the post-content bosses, and if you are somewhere around 15 levels below, they crack the heck out of your characters in one hit. But what can I say? I like to farm. Some of you may know what I'm talking about, but in Bloodborne there were some stages with chalices that a lot of people hated. Well, to me this part of the game was something similar, but unlike many, I enjoy it. So just keep that in mind if that gives you an idea of where the game leads you after some time. In all honesty, I would have liked to have a higher difficulty, where every move actually mattered, counters and evasions alike. However, for me the gameplay was a 7. For the graphics, I usually check game performance, the general ideas of the game and some other visual things. This is the PS5 version of the game. I had no issues playing it. Perhaps the only glitch I saw was when I got beaten and the character respawned laying down, so it was kinda funny to see how the attacks appeared out of nowhere. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to record it. Other than that, the game runs smoothly. Returning to the comment I did about its seemingly emptiness, in a good number of futuristic stories these kind of blocky landscapes are used. Once I was diving in some stages, I remember a manga named Blame, where you can see similar structures with many blocks. Also, recommended the story if you wanna dive into a really weird world with cyborgs. And in all honesty, I have no issues if a world looks this empty at all. I believe oftentimes we wanna see rooms filled with lots and lots of moving stuff, emitting lights and stuff like that. What I found annoying is that the so freaking scene you hear me talk in a good number of games, with this one goes quite far. Literally there are like 40 enemies, where 20 of them are repeated to no end. And this surprises me a lot because when I check the sketches for the art, there are good ideas. I liked most of them, even the specific moments while they narrate some stories, but reducing your whole potential to just somewhere around 40 enemies definitely didn't help at all. The game needed more love in this department. Visually speaking, what it presents in the Imitation Garden was good, cinematics and some other areas, but repeating enemies in this way felt bad. It is another 6.5. And last but not least, it's music, most of it being electronic. And I mean with good merit, because that is what fits a futuristic setting the most. My expertise with these ones isn't that great, but it feels somewhat close to what the future funk is, with a nice combination of Edo tracks, if I am not mistaken. For the most part, the game has a good ambience. Particularly, I enjoy the tracks at the mid of the story. I believe it is worth mentioning that I am not a big fan of vocals, lyrics in music, but some of these tracks were decent for me. And the ones I consider the best moments come while fighting the Trinity, as they have a really chaotic track that fits really well the pace of these fights, and the cardinals with a rhythm like if you are fighting something like an elder samurai. As for the chill tracks, most of them were of my liking. The OST gets an 8. CRYMACHINA final score is a 7. It is a decent game, I enjoy it, but it fell short in important moments. I wouldn't recommend this game to many people, unless you like a not so straight story, wink wink, with several twists here and there, and a combat system that needs a better balance, along its empty catalog of enemies. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.